All right. So we have quite a treat. This is our first official interview with a member of the Colgate staff, and we are lucky enough to be joined by Tiffany Lane, who's the acting director of the ALANA Cultural Center, and also the full director of the LGBTQ plus initiatives at Colgate University. And Tiffany, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. We're both repping right now. I got the JCK Legends Never Die hat. You got that Colgate hat. It's a fresh hat too. I love it.
Thank you.
Well, first and foremost, I would love for you to just introduce yourself, because I know you can speak to this work very well.
Yep. So I started at Colgate as the director of the LGBTQ plus initiatives July of 2018. So I'm wrapping up my second academic year,
Nice.
the strange second academic spring semester year, of course. I've always wanted to work with LGBT students, particularly being a director. So that's how I ended up on this path. Started out student activist and then led into this being a full-time career. And as I've gone through this career, I've definitely noticed a lot of students dealing with mental health issues and whatnot. And as we all know that it's under-resourced and it's still a stigma to talk about, but as I've continued working with students, I've noticed things a lot more. And so for me, I know that it's made me think about what more can I do in my role? And then also thinking about beyond my role in terms of more education, how I can equip myself, because there's still things that I don't know, but obviously that comes from also to the stigma and the lack of resources as well. So just to help students, and obviously the under-resourcing of career counseling centers across the country and whatnot. And so it's just really important for us to be prepared to help our students.
Yeah, and I think it's always just amazing what you guys are doing too, because I think as we've seen, we were talking with the group yesterday, and it's just the stigma of mental health in general is already, it's brutal, right? And when you're dealing with students, I mean, I think it's always, dealing with students is always something that I think it's always like the front line of defense in a sense, because I know personally when I was in college, that was when my mental health issues really popped up the most. And that was when I felt the most isolated and felt the most alone. And I mean, what you're doing, I think, is just so important, because you're able to give people, you're able to give students a feeling of belonging and a feeling that they don't have to be ashamed of what's going on in their head. They don't have to be ashamed of what is going on. Because for me, the biggest thing that I was crushed was just shame. And for me, just being a man, I was so ashamed to talk about it, right? And I felt like if I said this, I was weak. And I just got to say, all the work that you're doing, first and foremost, I just wanted to put it out there. I got to commend you. It's amazing. And obviously we're in a time where, COVID-19 is something I don't think any of us ever could have expected, any of us ever could have anticipated. And first of all, I mean, I want to ask, how are you doing with it personally? How is it going? How has that been for you?
So for me, I'm fine in terms of hunkering down and being in my home. I live alone already, and I don't go out too much because as I've gotten older, I've enjoyed my home. It would be nice to have the options of going to bookstores and going out and being in crowds and going to my favorite coffee shop, but you just adjust. So for me, it hasn't been too big of a adjustment, but I'm sure if we get to, I don't know, month 2, I might say, I really want to get out. So I've been fine. I've also used the time to, catch up on reading, because I love to read, spend more time with me, do new hobbies. Don't have to clean my house too much because I keep it pretty neat already. So I've found ways to keep myself busy, and going on walks has been helpful. And when I was younger, I used to go on walks all the time, and that kind of stopped as I got older because I got busy, but now I've found the time to be with me. So I've been fine, but I can only imagine if you were a very outgoing person and very social, this would feel very crushing. And so I think about that too. And there are moments I would love to be physically next to my friends, but I keep in mind that this won't be forever. And if we're going to keep flattening the curve, as Governor Cuomo has said, like, you have to make small sacrifices. And I know for many, it feels like a big sacrifice, But in the end, I think about, I'd rather be inconvenienced for another month or two than not be able to live my entire life. And so that's how I kind of keep it in perspective when I'm like, man, I really wish I could go see a movie, or I really want to go out and grab a beer. So that's how I keep it in mind. But that's me personally. Now I know there's other folks who it's hard to think about the future when there is no end date, which is what's really scary for a lot of folks, is we don't know when this is going to end.
Yeah.
We don't know what the fall is going to look like. We don't even know what the next week will look like. And so that's, for a lot of people, even me too, is really like hard to comprehend, because we're so used to end dates and expirations. And this is just one of those things where we don't know. And the unknown for a lot of folks can be scary. And if you're a student who has mental health issues, this is very, very scary. And so for me, I'm doing fine, but I know there are folks who this is really, really challenging for them.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, the next question I was going to ask is, how have the students been reacting to this? How has this been, has this adjustment been for students that you've been working with?
For some students, it's still an adjustment. Going from in-person to online classes is an adjustment. For some of my students, their home life hasn't been too bad, which is a positive.
Yeah.
But I do know there are some students where home life isn't great. And so I'm hoping they're okay. I know for some students, there's been some anxiety around using Zoom a lot because they're not used to that. And then also to add in, if you don't live in a household where you have pretty good internet, or you now are not only a student online, but you're also the caretaker, that's also another added stress on top of, when is this crisis going to be over? So there are some students that are adjusting pretty much fairly well, and there are some that are struggling. And it's to be expected, because to get thrown back into the real world without, just all of a sudden, without any warning, that is scary for people. And then, as if you're LGBT identified and you come from a home that isn't very welcoming, you have to figure out how to survive that, because it's not as simple as, oh, I can go to my friend's house, or, oh, I can go to this movie and get away from my family. No, you're literally in there all day. So unless you take to walking a lot, and whether it be rain or shine, or snow that we had last week, which is so odd.
Crazy.
Right, it's an adjustment. It's finding new ways to survive that environment. And then if you're in a situation like you were talking about with, child abuse, or even worse, it's figuring out how do you navigate that situation, because again, it's not as simple as, oh, I can just leave for a few days. You can't leave. In New York, we still have the switching off of days where odd and even birthdays can go out and do their essential shopping. And that's unheard of. So it's for some, it's really challenging. And I think about, everyone's talking about this new normal. I don't even say it's a new normal anymore. It's not normal. And when we get back to society, I say society opening up again, nothing's going to be normal again. People are going to feel differently about being in big crowds. I think folks are going to feel differently about being in big crowds. I can see folks being really cautious when they're sick or someone they know is sick. I could even see I even think about our programming numbers going down a little bit, because you're in crowds and you don't know who's sick or what new virus might be out there. I could see a lot of anxiety. I could see a lot of trauma with this, because we still don't know if it's airborne or not. Folks who were really healthy and young were getting sick and they were dying. So there's just a lot to this that is just so unknown and so scary, that when we get back to our lives, it's not going to be the same for folks. Even me, I can see myself feeling a little bit differently about people being sick. I'm already a stickler. Like when my kids are coughing in my office, I'm like, I give them hand sanitizer and a tissue. No joke. But I can see myself saying, let's cancel the meeting till you feel 100% better. Because when you're in college, we all went to class sick. I did it too, because you don't want to miss out. But I could see myself acting differently around people. And so I think that's going to be one of the unfortunate consequences about this when society does get back to normal. It's not going to be like, oh, we just pick up where we left off, because no one expected this, and no one expected the country to be shut down. No one ever thought they'd be quarantined. This is something you see in a movie. And then you add on top of that the mental health um, issues with that. I mean, that's going to probably heighten it even more for folks. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw an increase in the amount of students going to counseling, um, on colleges, and then even therapists like saying we are like overrun by patients because they want to talk about this, because it can be traumatic for folks. So it's a lot, and we all have to wrap our heads around it. But I mean, it is hard to wrap your head around, because who woke up one day and thought, I'd love to live in a day and age where I'm around a crisis. No one thinks about that, and now we're in it. And so what do you do?
Yeah. And you brought up so many powerful and good points there too. And, I was talking with someone yesterday too about the trauma that is happening right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're not even realizing it, because in a couple months, whenever this is all over, like you said, we're not even realizing, oh, I might not want to go into a large space anymore. I might not want to have that conversation. I might not want to see my friend. And all of a sudden that could lead to more isolation. And I think one thing that you also really brought up that's so important is, students with tough home lives, right, that might be out, right, and at Colgate, but when they go back home, they might not have that welcoming environment that is provided, while they're at school with their friends, with people they're comfortable with. And for me, that breaks my heart, because it's like, that's something that you think about, and you're like, man, you just wish that person suffering could just understand, hey, even though it's a tough environment right now, you're going to be back soon, you're going to be able to get through this. But I guess, what is some advice that you could give for students that might be in that type of situation?
Yeah. I mean, it's harder to think about what to say when you technically don't have an escape right now, to fit like a physical place to go. I would say to folks who are in that environment, this is a really good time to reach out to your friends virtually, if you have the capability. Because again, we can't assume everyone in this day and age has access to internet, let alone a smartphone and all that. And I think that's something that people forget about in this situation. Reaching out to the folks that you can, finding ways to keep yourself busy. This might be a good way to develop, people are coming up with new creative ways of letting their emotions flow. Like, one of my friends has been painting a lot. Another one of my friends is making bread.
Hey.
um, I know someone who is really into journaling a lot more now. And so if you can find a way to like take what you're feeling and put it to paper, whether it be coloring, whether it be journaling, writing stories, that could end up being great selling novels. Just finding other ways to stay hopeful, but getting those feelings out, reaching out to folks. I mean, there's tons of resources for like hotlines and online chat rooms. I've seen a lot of stuff on Facebook with different organizations having virtual support groups is really important. It's just finding ways to find the supports that you need and hanging in there, but also knowing it is hard, because again, you don't have that physical escape. But also too, if you can get out and walk for even like 5 minutes just to clear your head and be in nature, even if it's raining and not the warmest. I mean, I still go out and walk when it's like 39 degrees. It's just good to move my legs, so I'm not sitting all day. But it's also good for me to clear my head, because you can easily get cabin fever. So that's what I say, is find a way to channel those emotions, to reach out to people, try those hotlines, try those virtual support groups if you can. And as hard as it is to think about, like, keep in mind that this will pass and this will get better. And just taking it one day at a time, which is a big thing. Because again, we don't know what the next day or week will look like, but taking it one day at a time and just trying to focus on yourself and getting through this really tough time.
That's such good advice too, because even, personally, when, I suffer from OCD and depression, and when it gets going pretty hard, right?
Yeah.
And I actually have been doing one thing that I've been seeing really helpful is, like you said, taking it one day at a time and finding community in a sense. And what I've been doing a lot is, I actually, for the first time last week, I drew out my emotions. I did like an art therapy class, and I literally
Mhm.
drew out everything I was going through, and it ended up being this thing that I actually keep in my room now, and I look at every day to see where I'm at personally. and being able to get that out there was therapeutic for me, and doing other healthy stress management techniques that, I'll be honest, when I was 21, 22 years old, I didn't do. I just didn't know I could do that.
Mhm.
But, now as a 30-year-old, I was able to say, okay, maybe I can do a little bit of yoga or meditate. And I've been doing a lot of things to slow my mind down a bit, and find that community a little bit, because that's the key. It's like you said, anyone that might feel isolated right now, just showing them, hey, you're here for them. We're here for you. We want to do whatever we can to help. And I would love to hear maybe about some of the things that you guys are doing right now at Colgate, at ALANA, with all of your initiatives, some things that you're doing right now. While while this world is in a crazy, yeah.
Yeah, so with ALANA, we did some of our students that sit on campus that still want to work for us, they're doing some virtual programming. So last week, one of our students did like songwriting. This week, I believe, is hip and hopping, I believe. Another one of our students is talking about ALANA and me, so like reflecting on what ALANA has meant to him. They're both seniors too. TED Talks, or having TED Talks in our newsletter. And so it's just, our assistant director is doing with administrative dean a coffee break as well. And so just providing not only stuff for them to keep occupied, but also to just allowing students to have another outlet in terms of, okay, if they're done with their online lesson or studying, like they can like hop on around noon and hear Juan talk about music and whatnot, because he's a music major. They can hear Anthony talk about what ALANA's meant to him, or him discussing a TED Talk or a book. Or they can have a coffee break with Esther and Aurelius, which has been good. And it's different with virtual programming because it's not the same.
Yeah.
And realistically, students might not be thinking about, programming so much as, okay, I have to get through this online lesson. But it's just it's an option for them to take their mind off of things. We all also have office hours. Through the LGBT side, I have office hours, and I've been using my social media and newsletter to keep people engaged, in terms of like, things you can do during quarantine, talking about some help. The next newsletter will focus on sexual assault like resources and how to help people. I've also promoted, there's been a lot of other online programs happening. So like I've seen like panels be virtual. I've seen drag shows be offered virtually, or having like talks with panelists about certain things. So offering that up just to give people ideas in terms of other things they can look to keep their minds occupied as well. And connecting with students as well, just so that they know they're not alone. Because I think right now what our students need more is just to know that they can reach out to folks, and that they have support. And even if it's just a 5-minute Zoom chat of a rant, that's still fine. We all need to rant sometimes. But yeah, just keeping connected and making sure they know that they're supported for both our offices is what's really been our mission right now.
Well, it's awesome when I hear this too, because your main priority is keeping these students connected and making them feel comfortable. Because right now, the hardest part about this time is there's already so much pressure of life. There's already, I know Colgate it's not easy. It's hard. There's a lot of work that has to be done. A lot of extremely smart people that go there, and trying to take that pressure off a little bit and almost be in the moment and say, hey, our first priority is you. Just slow down. It's okay. You can open up to me. You can talk to me. You're building that community first. And when you build community, I think that leads to such healthier people, right? Because if I was even talking to I was telling you a little about the middle school headmaster I was talking to.
Yeah.
And he was saying the same thing, how with the students, it's like, listen, there's already enough pressure, get the work done in your own time. First and foremost, focus on you, how you're feeling. What's going on in the world right now is totally different. And there's a lot of pain, and there's a lot of, secondhand grief that we're feeling too. So
Right.
there's a lot of different, emotions being thrown at us. And I love the fact that you are so open with the students. You do the work on social media. You're here right now talking and letting students know that you're there for them, right?
Mhm.
Because that first and foremost allows, that can allow a student to get out of a rut and to allow them to get into a better state of mind. And one thing I think is really important too is, with this situation, it's throwing us challenges that we never expected or never signed up for. And I think when we are able to try to maintain a positive mindset, when we can be open, right? And when we can know that we can use these resources around us, we can still FaceTime our friends, we can still use the amazing resources that you're providing, all of a sudden you start realizing, okay, there's other ways that I can learn about myself that I didn't even know possible. And that builds some strength. That builds some big time resilience for when this is all over, because then you could go back to those calming moments and say, well, I dealt with this. I can handle this like that now. And I think it actually, can allow us to improve as people and just be more confident.
Yeah. Yeah, there's oh, there's so much going on right now that folks just need to know that they're not alone. I mean, that's been the message on TV, on NPR, and everywhere is like, you're not alone and coming together as a community. And it is really hard. I mean, there are folks, I mean, I think the unemployment rate right now is what, 10 million? Um, Unheard of, right? The fact that you have people that are waiting in line for food, but then you hear about farmers in, I think they said Kentucky or somewhere, they have to dump all the milk because people aren't buying it and they can't store it because it's going to waste. And it's just so bizarre. You never thought you'd be in a day and age where you would see all that. And so right now it's really about coming together and helping each other and being there for each other. And especially for our students, because again, we don't know their home lives outside of Colgate other than what they might tell us in confidence. And so to be back at home, and things are very, very different. Everything is online. You can't even go into like a convenience store and get anything. You might have to get it delivered or hand it out to you curbside. um it's so surreal. And right now folks just need to know that they're not alone and just staying connected in the best way that we can, while also continuing to flatten that curve. So yeah, it's a lot right now. It's a very weird time we're in right now.
Yeah. And you're doing an amazing job, though. So you should be commended. You should be very proud of the work you're doing.
Thank
And,
you.
and before we end this, I just figured, is there anything else about yourself, about any of the initiatives that you're leading that you would like to put out there to the world?
I would just say, to the students and whoever's listening is, you're not alone in this. My office, LGBTQ plus initiatives and the ALANA Cultural Center, we're all here for you. Esther and Carly, we're great resources. So um, feel free to reach out to us anytime, because this is a hard time, but we will get, as cliche as it sounds, I know, we will get through this. And I just want folks to know that they have folks here who are thinking about them all the time. We miss them on campus. We miss their faces dearly. And any way we can bring a smile to their face or we're not, reach out to us, because we want them to know that they're thought about dearly, and we are here. We will always have their back.
Tiffany, that was amazing. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.